Okay,
Okay, at this time, I shall call the Village of Belgium Silver Beach Road Committee to order. Roll call. Dan?
I'm here.
Yep.
Hey, Dan's, yeah.
Yep. Tom Winker, Ozaki County.
Here.
Yeah, Ron Weicker, Brady Engels.
Here.
Okay, so we do have a quorum established. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Vicky, we've been properly noticed.
yes,
Open meeting compliance check.
yes, we are.
Okay, if we could all please rise, remove our hats for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We could have a moment of silence for our veterans and police officers that have been died in the line of duty. Okay, thanks everyone for coming. We did have the previous meeting's minutes. Somebody want to make a approval as such? We have motion by Dan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Pete. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All righty. What I would like to do first, we're just going to go around the audience, and most people know who we all are, but just introduce yourself.
Glenn Gottsacker, village trustee.
Don Gotcha, village trustee.
Sarah Hessler, village trustee.
John Edgren, Ozaki County Highway Commissioner.
And Vicky Bayline is with the village. So John, if you don't mind, we're going to put you on first, but what I'd like to do, because I'm not sure you understand the full scope of what we're looking at doing, have Dan talk about the scope of the project. It's going to be a minimum of 3 to 5 years, but Dan, just talk about the scope of the projects and your hopes and dreams out there.
The scope of the project is to get some stormwater drainage up there, ponds, and then make the road fully improved for village standards for semi-traffic and everything. And I had sent John all the information what we had done already. We had soil borings done out there. We had the road design drawn up. We had some numbers on a pond and everything, so that's what the village would like to see out there, so.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And I did talk to John today, very simply. I did ask John to be here mainly to create an awareness as it goes down the road, maybe in 3 to 5 years when things start happening. Obviously, the county is a good partner. Myself, as town chairman, I can tell you we've partnered with the county many times, but there's opportunities for both sides, the county, the village, the town, you know, to interact, be a good partner. Maybe there's some fill needed, maybe they're doing a project, maybe vice versa. But I did ask John just to come out. So John, first of all, I'm just going to ask you, talk about the upcoming 21 year and what highway projects and stuff that you're looking at doing in Ozaki County, both state and county.
Sure, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I enjoy anytime there's a chance to get out and I can talk a little bit about county projects. And certainly anything that this insight helps me understand that as I hear about grants, I hear about possibilities of money coming forward, because there have been a number of discussions about the feds coming out with more infrastructure funding and that type of thing, that it may, you know, the discussion that I may just put something in my bug in my ear that if I hear something, I might be able to forward it to you guys. But certainly from the county standpoint, we have 2 main projects we're looking to do this year. We're looking to widen and repave County Trunk Highway Y from Newburgh pretty much all the way up to AH. It's a good about 6-mile stretch. And that'll be really trying to add some shoulders and widening out the asphalt shoulders, especially there along the River Edge Nature Center. That now is a full-time school, and with the number of kids walking around out there, we want to make sure they can get a little bit off the road when they're wandering through that area. We're also up in this area doing a repave and a widening of County Trunk Highway KW from Lake Drive to A. Those are the county's main projects this year. In anticipation of some paving in the next couple of years, there will be a little bit of a headache for you guys out west in I'm not sure if it's town of Saukville or I mean the town of Fredonia or town of Belgium, but west on D, there's going to be a time this summer that we're going to be replacing a large box culvert. I think it's about an 8 foot by 16 foot box culvert. So there will be about a week or so that we have D shut down out west of the village of Belgium. For the state, it's a 1-year period of rest and relaxation for Ozaki County as far as state projects go, is because in 2022, we start knocking projects off all over the place. Near the end of 21, they'll start doing some work on the I-43 expansion from Silver Spring all the way up to State Truck Highway 60, where they're going to expand it from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. At the end of this year, they'll start doing some tree cutting and some stuff kind of on the sides, nothing that impacts traffic. But 2022, they're starting gangbusters to begin that expansion and begin there's going to be an interchange at the Highland Road area right by Concordia. Or if you like the Highland House, nice easy access to get down to Highland House. And so that'll kick off in 2022. At the same time in 2022, the diamond grind that was done on 43, they missed a stretch of 57, kind of extending from 43 north up to W, a long stretch of concrete that they didn't do anything with. They're going to come back and do a diamond grind on that in 2022 for the state. Those are the 2 major projects. There's also a number of projects down on the south end of the county where they're going to just put a layer of asphalt to a pave over Mequon Road on the west edge of Mequon all the way out to Germantown. They're going to resurface 57 through Mequon down in Milwaukee. I think that's about it. But those are certainly the big things that will be occurring over the next couple of years. Any questions on county projects or anything we're looking at doing or anything about the state projects?
Just to add on what John had said about the I-43 expansion project, the county board has committed to throwing money into the kitty with the interchange down at the Highland projects. And very simply, if the county doesn't commit to that, and I believe it's around $1.75 million, John, somewhere around there. We got some of the money. We're going to have to levy or borrow for the rest of it. But very simply, if the county doesn't improve that intersection, we're looking at down the road, 10, 15 years, Port Road is just growing and growing as far as use. So we would be kind of have to develop that corridor. And it really doesn't make any sense when you have an interstate running parallel to a county road like that, that we don't hop on board. And I will tell you, the entire county board is behind that project. And I think it's going to be good for the area. You know, some of it will be, if you understand how interstates work, some parts of it are not wide enough to put a median strip in. So there will be a whale wall down the middle. But where it's wide enough, they'll keep the median strip in the middle and put the lane on the outside. So it'll kind of be a little deal. And I do believe, John, just explain, I do believe that's going to be one of them diamond interchanges there on Highland.
I don't think diamond, well, okay, so you're going to confuse me with terms. Diamond interchanges, yeah, just kind of a standard.
Where you drive on the wrong side of the road.
No, one of those will be occurring at Brown Deer Road.
Okay.
What he's talking about is there's some, again, as civil engineers, we like coming up with all sorts of goofy things. If you've ever messed up a system, it's probably an engineer behind it because we had a grand plan that probably didn't make common sense. And there's a new system out there that civil engineers are trying to use, what Tom's talking about, diamond interchange, where trying to avoid cars turning left in front of each other. So what they are starting to do is having signalized intersections on either side of going over an interstate. And you will actually, when you begin to cross the bridge, you will cross to, in essence, the wrong side of the road. So that then when you turn onto the interstate, you're not crossing traffic. It's the signal before you cross. So you cross over the bridge on the wrong side of the road, and then you can immediately turn to go on your southbound, or same thing going the other direction. If you're coming the other direction, you're switching to the wrong side of the road to then enter the freeway. Can't tell you exactly why that is, but again, I think the idea is anytime you have cars doing the left turns around each other is something they're trying to avoid. And so that will be occurring at the Brown Deer intersection. I believe Highland is just the standard as you have here with Belgium. You know, as you come down, you get off, and as you enter, you go back down again. There's also, if you guys are familiar with that area, there is a change as well. Kind of just south of there, there's kind of a half interchange where from the Mequon area, you can go from Fort Washington Road, you can get on southbound. And if you're coming northbound, you can get off kind of northbound onto Fort Washington Road, but it's not a full interchange. the feds would not allow that anymore. They either said they had to put a full interchange there, or they had to remove those two, and it would just be between Brown Deer and Mequon Road. So eventually Mequon did agree that they're putting a full interchange at that location, kind of where County Truck Highway W or Fort Washington Road crosses over I-43 at that location on the south side of Mequon. That location is now going to be a full interchange as well.
And I do believe, John, there is, and I think that was the term, diamond interchange, down on Highway 11 and I-90 around Janesville.
Okay.
There is one currently operating, and the first time you hop on, you go, I'm on the wrong side of the road. But that's where you belong. So it is just, it's like roundabouts. It's something that we're just gonna have to get used to because it's what is used in the modern world today. Yeah. John, just one other thing. There are some challenges down there with that railroad going through there. Do you know any of the specifics on what's happening there with that?
No, I haven't heard anything specifically regarding the road, what I'm certainly talking about is there's not a lot of room in that I-43 corridor, especially in that Mequon to Grafton area to expand, because you have the railroad immediately to the east. And so I know one of the main things they're doing is, and I think I'm going to do this, but that a lot of the 43 expansion, they're actually going to be putting the 2 lanes on the inside. And so rather than expanding outwards and having the full large grass median, they're going to be putting the 2 lanes to the inside and then having guardrail along the center where they currently have a large grass median with just cable guard. They'll be narrowing that up and then potentially just putting a double guardrail that way.
Other questions, comments of John? I will tell you, John, how long you been here with the county? Yeah, and John did come originally from Washington County.
Yep, I was commissioner at Washington.
It was their loss that we were able to hire him, and John's been a good asset to Ozaukee County. Yeah, so, any other questions of John?
Know where I am if you need me.
Yep. Vicky, is somebody on the phone?
Yes, but I'm not sure. if-
Yeah, I am, Tom.
Some stuff?
Hey, this is Tom Winker from the Ozaukee County Board. Who am I talking to?
Dewey Strobel is on the phone.
Lights on, nobody's home. Hit the button under the table, Pete?
You're in charge tonight.
Let me try switching to a different speed.
And on a lot of Zoom calls.
Tom,
Can
Tom,
you,
Dewey Strobel here.
now?
Are you guys there on the phone? Hello?
Tom, are you there?
We need to-
There are,
No, you don't need to touch any.
and I ain't touching any.
Joys of technology.
I was told that instructions were to do.
Oh, maybe it was a problem on their end, they dropped off.
Okay. So John, I guess if they're off, we got a minute here. Did you have any comments or suggestions, or after looking at Danny's paperwork that he sent you, you know, do you see anything from your end? Obviously, they had it engineered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I saw, you know, again, I think everything you looked at made sense, everything that they had laid out. It's simply the difficulties of split bureaucracy. I have that on several county and village or county and city intersections, and how do you join together to create something that, you know, is it a net benefit for everyone involved, or how does it become a net benefit for everyone involved? But no, everything with what they had in there makes sense.
Well, okay, but looking at it, how would you approach it? You've got to.
Who am I with, the village or the town?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's the main, you know, impetus of this project. Anything that you're looking for on this project. Now, again, I don't know what the village has even talked about in the past, but I don't think they can officially annex the road unless they own properties on either side. And so I think they can, in essence, create a maintenance agreement to maintain and take the roadway. But I believe we've run into this with the city of Fort Washington, the county highway, where we've asked them to take over or annex the roadway, and they were told they couldn't if they didn't have property on at least one side or the other. But again, you can get around that with maintenance agreements if it wouldn't be an official right of way. No, I don't have a good answer for you, Ron. You know,
I guess I'm leaning toward what type of grants or what would you
Sure.
suggest looking at it in that area? Is it something you think that there would be a reasonable chance? Is it something that you would see, maybe it's 2-3 years down the road, or is it,
Yeah.
just kind of,
Again, they've been talking.
just your thoughts.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of discussion about that. There's going to be money available for infrastructure. I know Tom was a major player in the MLS, the multimodal local supplement grant that came out from the DOT. And I've heard discussions that 75 million, that I want to say there was 2 billion in requests.
Yeah, and actually, John, once they took the governor to court, then they got the extra 15 million, so it was 90 million.
Okay, was it 90?
Yeah, and it was not split equally, but the counties got a portion, the towns got, I'm gonna say about 29 million, and I felt very fortunate, no, we probably got about 36 million. I felt very fortunate, I was asked to chair the committee.
Yeah.
And the one thing we did, we really tried to spread that money out through the entire state,
But certainly the need showed, because
Oh.
the number of applications
Yeah.
for that. So I've heard that they've talked about potentially putting that 75 million within my annual budget every 2 years. Again, there's been big discussion within the feds on infrastructure grants. And so certainly it actually helps, again, to have some plans done for some of those bigger projects, because they may come along similar to 2009, 2010, when they had the ARA, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, where they said, hey, if you have projects that are ready to go, apply for this funding, and we may be able to do a good portion of that funding, because we want this money to get people paid to be working. And so, I think there's going to be opportunities out there. I think the difficulty is, again, understanding what that relationship is to the town and the village, to this project. And I don't know what the discussions have been as far as our cost shares. Is it all village, all town, whatever the case may be?
Yeah, well,
And that's a much bigger discussion than the.
And John, just to your point, I will tell you, we asked the WTA attorney, and what they told us, when we're done with the road, we could just turn it over to the village. And that's what they told us. Now, that's somebody's interpretation, that's a legal attorney's interpretation. We're not gonna hold anything back. I know Pete did approach us. We got enough stuff on our plate. Certainly, we're partners with the village, but we can't be helping the village because we have enough on our plate, just with everything, so, yeah. So Ronnie, you had other comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is, I'm not that familiar with these grants, but generally, if you apply, is it something that's a couple years old, 1 to 2, 2 to 3? Is it, and then what's the percent that they come? Give me a range. Give me a range.
I would tell you for this type of project, off the top of my head, I'm guessing you're gonna talk about a 50-50, 50% feds to 50% local. But if it's part of more of an infrastructure act, a lot of those will come in at like 80-20 or 90-10. Typically 90-10 is reserved for more safety improvements. We have a couple of traffic signals going and some other highway improvements going that are 90-10, but those are where you've shown there are accidents and it's a safety issue. More often than not, then it's looking about that 80-20. But I know there are some state grants that look at economic impact, and those are typically about 50-50.
Okay, so from what I understand from the past meetings, people, like you're saying, the village is really not in a position to handle a 50% at this point.
No,
So you'd almost have to be thinking about the 90-10 type, huh?
that would be perfect for us, but like right now, we don't have the upfront funds
Okay,
to do
and
something like that.
when would that be? About 2 years, 3, 4, 5 years down the road? Will you have funds?
I'll wait for our money lady to come back.
And very simply, I'll add to John's point, when it comes down to the ratios on them, that, I think they called it MLS money, that 90 mil that we give away that time. We, as a towns association, went in and go, if we're gonna try to affect as many members as we can, we dropped the rate to a 70-30. And I tell you what, from a governing person running a town or a village or what, or county, very simply, 70% beats no percent. So that's the way you have to look at it. I understand where the village is. Maybe your borrowing capacity isn't quite where it needs to be yet. You might have to wait a couple years. But Ronnie, to your point, there's many different options out there, and depend what form it's going to come in.
And I would add.
So they could run all the way from 50% to 90%, depending on circumstances.
On type of grants. The other thing I would say is with most of those grants, you're probably looking at.
Can
even
you
with
hear me
plans already
talking?
done, You're probably talking at least a year out, if not 2 years out. Because when
Okay.
you get into the feds, you have so many.
I'm just trying to
reports
test if the
and-
microphone
and
is working. If
Documentation
you,
and things you have to do, it just simply takes time.
And if you break a project up into like roads and what's the other?
The water issue.
I'll come in there. I'm just trying to
Has to go first.
figure out what's
They can
wrong
do
because
separate grants.
Again, a lot of what you're gonna get through the DOT, from what I deal with, it would only be.
Dewey
for the
Strobel
road.
is
You
on
could
the line here,
possibly
but
get the pond included,
a lot of people
but that
talking.
application, it would have to come in along with it. Now, again, if you're looking at a natural resources grant, that could be the pond by itself. But if you're looking at the transportation and those type of grants, you're gonna wanna keep those attached together because
Yeah.
the DOT is not gonna fund a pond without an attached known highway getting built with it.
So you could do them both, you should do them both at the same time, though you could have it set that we do this one in 2 years and this one in
Yeah,
3 years.
sure.
Or this one in 3 years and this one in 5 years.
Sure.
And just to add on to John's point, John, I don't know if you're aware, over the winter, the town met with the chairman from the town of Belgium, Holland Ditch. And the village and town did an assessment and there's money currently getting into some checkbooks. And so we as landowners in the town are looking to help drain some of the farmland in the area. So we've kind of got after them guys, in the next couple of years, you need to get that done. I will tell you from just sheer experience, that is going to help the water issues down there at the waste treatment plant.
That would help. but it ain't cure.
Oh, it ain't 100% cure, but anything helps. Yeah, it's like
I
when,
just say, when the road goes over 2-3 feet, what they drain out of that ditch ain't gonna take that down.
no.
Fair road.
And then
So you gotta think
Before
of
we
that
go any
too.
further, can we see if the person on the phone can speak now?
Hate to keep you waiting. This is Supervisor Winker from Ozaukee County Board. Do we have somebody on the line?
Yeah, Tom, this is Dewey. Can
Hello?
you hear me? Hello?
Absolutely. Dewey, we're going to turn, Dewey, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you now. I've been kind of trying to chip in a little bit, but I don't know if you guys had me on mute. I know I'm not on mute on my end, but I'm glad you can hear me now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do believe it was just tech on our end, but we're not going to do any finger pointing. Dewey, when I had talked to your chief of staff, what we're looking at doing is just trying to create an awareness for the village of Belgium and try to partner with as many people as we can so they can find some grants. I did talk to you about that also. I guess just give us, a 5 or 10 minute synopsis on opportunities where you see if it's through the feds. I don't think there's going to be much from the state, but just chime in where you think there could be some opportunities.
yeah, well, if I understand it right, there's some constraints here. And the constraints are that there's really no borrowing capacity available. Am I correct on that?
It could be a couple years down the road, Dewey, but when you start looking at grants, everybody knows it takes a minimum of a year to fill out a grant and takes another year to wait for the grant. So I think we are pretty timely, but if you would say you want to start the project this spring, no, the village of Belgium does not have the borrowing capacity for that.
Sure, right. Well, I guess that was something that I was aware of. And then, of course, because a lot of these things, I think, as I've kind of gleaned a little bit from trying to hear what's going on there is, these things oftentimes are largely through reimbursement as opposed to, of course, upfront cash payments. And really, if that's the route you got to go, this STP program, that is an exception to that. But that is scheduled by the DOT on a 6-year cycle. So normally there's a fair amount of lead time on those things. Have you guys heard about that STP plan, or is that anything you guys have discussed at all? Or
Dewey, John Edgren is in the room. He's our road commissioner from Ozaukee County. John, have you heard of anything with the STP?
Yeah, you guys would be looking at an STP rural, I think, for that grant, and that goes directly through the DOT.
Yeah, so John is aware of it, Dewey.
Okay, yeah. And then the other one that comes to mind, and I think I have your minutes from your last meeting, and I think Ms. Schilling was talked about it a little bit, and that's the T grants, those TEA grants. You know, those, I mean, that's a competitive situation too, but they will, you know, there are grants that are available. It's called Transportation Economic Assistance Program. They generally provide grants to local governments to make infrastructure improvements. And it needs to be in connection with economic development projects, which would seem to be a fit there too. But generally these grants do not exceed $1 million, and it's really only funded statewide about $3.5 million annually, at least in the last budget. And they, you know, the DOT accepts applications, and, you know, they make a return determination as what they say is in a reasonable period of time. And then there's, you know, some criteria that the project has to meet. And it would appear that, at least from what I understand, it would appear that you guys could meet that criteria. But, I mean, that might be an option, but like I said, I'm not sure. I can get you guys some more details on that, or I didn't know if you really had been apprised of that and felt that that was not a good option or didn't quite work for you guys, or what.
Dewey, if you wouldn't mind, just have one of your staff members email over to the Village of Belgium any information you can get them on those grants. And with John's help and Andrew Struck's help here in the county, I think we got enough knowledgeable people here, once we have the information, that they could get us headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
Dewey, this is Dan Burma, Director. We had done a T grant probably back in the late 90s, middle 90s. We put the first section of Silver Beach Road in, we improved it. We widened it, we put some ditch in, and yeah, we got a substantial amount for the T grant.
Okay.
We had a business out there that had
Yeah.
so just so you're aware that.
Okay.
Good. Grant already.
Well, I mean, those are two things. I'll be happy to get you guys some more information on those. And just given your scenario, it seemed to be those were the ones that were most viable. Now, you know, if you guys think you have some borrowing capacity, you know, coming up, and when that would be might, you know, make a difference or what have you. But I mean, that really, and how much borrowing capacity do you think you have, and when will that be coming up, I guess, be my question.
You were breaking up there a little bit, Dewey, if you wouldn't mind repeating that.
Yeah, how much borrowing capacity will you have, and when will you have that borrowing capacity? Because it was my understanding you really didn't have anything right now.
Yeah, you must be in a poor area, because we just can't hear hardly a word you're saying, so. But very simply, Dewey, if you could email over the other stuff. I'm going to ask for other questions of the audience or the people at the table. Anybody got questions of Dewey Strobel, and he could listen. If he can't talk, maybe he can listen.
Can you hear me better now?
Peter Onzia, the village president. Yeah, can hear you now, Dewey.
Okay,
Pete Onzia,
okay.
the village president, is here alongside of me, Dewey. So Pete, any comments?
Is it better for us to go with the water problem before the road, or do everything at one time?
I'm sorry, with what issue before the road?
Water issue is the road floods out with 2 inches of rain.
Yeah. Well, let me take a look at this real quick here. Construction needs to begin within 3 years of the T grant being awarded. I see that here. I mean, I'd deal with that water thing now. I don't know. I didn't really hear all what you guys were saying, but I'm not sure how much money that takes, but you sure want to get that dealt with, because, you know, the longer you have water sitting there, the more likely you're going to have some
Sorry,
wetland
Dewey,
problems.
we're unable to understand.
Anybody else got any questions of Senator Strobel, as long as we got him on the phone? Dewey, we're not able to communicate, but we'd like to thank you for your time and everything you do for not only the village and town, but all of Ozaukee County. So anything you need, you make sure you give us a call. We'll be here to help you.
Okay, I don't know if you guys hear me now. You hear me now?
Okay, thanks, Dewey.
Tom?
That's technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what are you gonna do? Yeah. Vicky, as far as all the speakers we've had in, obviously you've had a list of different opportunities for grants. Do you have a handle on that as far as what's all available?
I was able to look on the rural, what was the agenda? The rural.
Initiative type stuff?
Yeah. There are grants. The problem was that it was at the end of the year and they don't always list until, like, they're just starting to list the 2021 grants now. But they have a lot of loan information, which doesn't do us any good. And the one grant that looked like it had potential, they are only interested in ones that are shovel ready and good to go. So that is not something that would work for us either. So, I mean, I think it would be something we would have to just keep an eye on over the years. There was one grant that didn't have this year's information up, but they had the previous year's awardees for it, and they were all state projects that got that money. So through that doesn't mean we couldn't apply, but.
From what I've heard in previous meetings, and particularly from Dan and so forth, the project is around 4.2 million. You need to do the water first from what I understand. It appears in the other discussions from what I've heard from people that you probably should apply for the whole project, even if you time phase it. So I guess the major question becomes, when is the village, about how many years down the road before the village? Well, let me back up a second. Listening to some of these people say grants can go from 10 to 90, but let's assume it's 50% because that's a number I hear more often than any other number. So how many years down the road before the village really is in a position that you could say, well, okay, if we apply for a grant, we'd be ready, we could get the funding in order to cover the 50% that we'd be responsible for, and we'd have a shovel-ready project. Now, maybe it's not exact, but is it 2 years, 5 years, 10? What is it?
It will for sure not be less than 5 years, and it could be as many as 10 because of the project that we're starting this year.
Wow.
Our net capacity as of 2023 is going to be almost at max for at least 4 to 5 years.
Then, so even if something came along that, like the government is now looking at maybe some infrastructure money again this year, spend our money that we'll have to, our grandkids will have to pay back sometime. If a grant was available, even at 80%, the village couldn't respond to it right now.
Correct. If we cannot take any money out.
And it'd probably be about 5 years at the best before you could.
Correct.
Well,
But the only way I think the village could do anything is we would have to raise taxes. We don't want to do that.
No, even with raising taxes, it's a debt limit issue. We cannot borrow more money for it.
Kind of somewhat related question. When does a big chunk of the TIF close, the first big chunk?
Well, it closes in 2020. Well, we're hoping 2022 to close it.
The whole thing or part of it?
All of it.
Well, that's almost like 27% of the tax base, isn't it?
It's going to improve our situation a lot, but that's how we're going to be funding the utility project that we're working on.
Ron, I don't know if you knew, we're doing a lot of sewer and water relay this year. And then the following year, we got 5 roads that we want to reconstruct.
Okay, so then actually the village board has prioritize that, which I don't have a fault with, it's just that doesn't appear to be a whole lot to do.
No, I agree
That's
with.
what I'm trying to get
Yeah,
at.
I agree with Ron. I think it was useful that we had this committee meeting. We have, identified some opportunities. But if the borrowing capacity isn't there anytime soon, but I'm glad we had the meetings and had the open discussion. But, if the village's hands are tied, short of, like Ron said, maybe they're gonna do some infrastructure and, all of a sudden it's a deal too good to pass up. Maybe if it is a 90-10, maybe there's some opportunities. Vicki, I got a question related to when you guys write grants, do you have your engineer write your grants or how do you do them?
We have not written a grant since I've been on the staff,
Maybe-
so Danny might know.
McMahon.
That
they
your
wrote that,
Engineer.
Main Street grant. Yeah,
Okay.
They do a lot of, they did a lot of grants for us.
And I will tell you, after chairing that last committee through the state, the only way you're ever gonna get any grant money is by having a professional do it.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, the town of Belgium had a project where we thought, there's some opportunities because of economic development. We scored high, but we weren't nowhere near the top where we needed to be, and it's just so.
Because you're up against other professionals.
Yeah.
I mean,
You gotta
they
get
helped us
the
with the
best
T
professional
grant.
help you can get.
Right.
Question for you, John. We're talking about grants that are based on like economic development.
Sure.
That can help that. And I basically know that that road would help economic development. Development out there on our industrial park
Sure.
is at a standstill right now.
Yep.
I don't think anybody will argue with me. Nothing is happening out there. And that road, I believe, and a lot of people are speculating on it, it would spur on economic development. The longer we drag our feet on this road and the water out there is gonna hurt us as a village. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, but what you suggest,
I've gone out and talked to those owners
okay.
out there.
That's fine,
Just let
we
me
all
finish.
agree with
Let me
that, but what
finish.
you
Let me
suggested,
finish.
what do you do?
I've talked to those owners out there and I've got a pretty good tab on what's going on out there. And nothing is gonna happen. Tryman was gonna build on and now they're not going to unless that road goes in. So. I'm just
That's a
gonna
sad
leave it in your hands
situation, but,
because
Hans,
things
what
are
do you
gonna-
suggest though?
We're just gonna keep getting bad here.
So you're on the village board, what do you suggest? You guys establish the priorities of what you're going to do.
Well, right now, we got a priority and we're
Yeah.
borrowing money for that, for this,
Sewer and water relay.
sewer and water plant, and, we have, it's a major thing, it's flooding
Yeah.
and stuff. We
I
need to
mean, I
take
think
care of it.
everybody agrees with you, nobody's fighting
I'm
the
just
fact that
saying
it should
that,
be done.
I'm just saying, there is a timetable on that. You can't sit there and wait 10 years. Those people could pull out there. Anyways, I'll leave it there.
And I will add, but Clem, you're 100% right. The two major vendors you have out there, the guy with all the semi trucks with the cheese splitting of loads, Mr. Dom, and Tryman, they're both reputable people that I think are going to be in business a long time. You are correct where you said they need infrastructure. But to Ronnie's point, if the village has set priorities and you have no borrowing capacity, and this committee has raised an awareness that there are grants available, but the village doesn't have any borrowing capacity. I'm not sure what the committee's limited to what we can do.
There's not much more we can do then. I mean,
I know.
you guys have decided what your priorities are. I mean,
The wall that dropped on that road years ago. That road should have been done in the 90s or early 2000s.
Well, I think in a perfect world, the industrial park should have been somewhere up on this end of town, closer to truck stop. But that's past. We can never go backwards.
We should have done the stormwater issue 15 years ago.
Yeah.
It was bad then and it's worse now.
Yeah.
So we have flooding every year. The spring and the fall.
We're
I
just-
never really realized how bad it was until I started going out there.
We're
And I'm
fortunate
going
that
like,
there's
oh
no
my
roads
God.
out there.
Correct.
And it bit us in the shorts this last time.
Tom, I think we're all in agreement with you, okay? all of the committee, we were trying to figure out how could you get this thing off a dead center? Tom contacted quite a few people that are with the county and with the state and with and our senator. And there are grants, all that information will be coming to the village. But then it does come down to that you have to face the fact that the village, you know, your fellow trustees and the village people are saying they will not be in a position to even to cover 50% or even 30% in less than 5 years. So how much time do you want to put now into? Because if you apply for a grant, you have to be ready. If there's penalties, right? If you apply for the grant, you have to have your end of the bargain ready to go. Otherwise, you could put a grant together and say, well, I guess we're not ready. But I think there's penalties with that.
Yeah, I mean, many of the programs that I looked at, there are loan programs that have loan forgiveness as a part of it, you know, a percentage of it, but all of those still require that we have borrowing ability. And so I didn't spend much time looking into those because I know that that's not an option right now.
It would appear to me that at least a minimum of 1 year and probably 2 years prior to funds becoming available, you should start the ball rolling. And what would you think, Tom?
No, I would agree 100% with
But
you.
I don't know if I'd start 5 years. I mean, if it's going to be that long, I don't know how much, you know, I'm sure, you know, how much time I would invest in it at this point.
And the other thing I will say, John sat through all the meetings that I sat through. The county just did a refinance with some projects they had out at the fairgrounds, and it is such an opportunity now to borrow money. Now the county has a AAA bond rating, but we went out to bond. We got, what was it, 3.5 million, John? Somewhere around there, a number like that. We got, it was 0.061%, I believe was the number. So less than 1%. So, you know, we all know there's needs here, but if the banker says no, the banker's going to say no, no matter how cheap the money is, you know. So, you know, I'm not saying we wasted our time here. I think we created quite an awareness here that there are opportunities here, but at the very least, I agree with Ron. I think it might be a couple years before there could be any opportunities for the village. I know that's not what you want to hear, but I think that's reality.
One of the things that looked beneficial, I became convinced being on this committee that yes, you need to do something out there. You need to get that stormwater taken care of. You need to get the road for all the reasons that you're mentioning as well. But then you do bump into the hard facts, and the fact is that the village elders don't believe that there'll be money available for the next 5 years. So unless you substitute some other project,
we will have a much better picture of exactly when our debt, you know, where our debt limit numbers are next year when we finalize the loan for the road and storm sewer project.
And the other thing to add on to Vicky's point, when they brought up that TIF district, I'm also on that TIF district committee. And very simply, I believe it was a consensus that we couldn't say out loud at the last year's meeting that they're hoping that that TIF gets closed up this year. Pete, is that something you would agree with?
Yeah.
22.
Yeah.
We'll start the process this year and
Yeah.
it'll close by April. 22.
Because sitting around the table, the only one that wasn't in favor of closing it was the gentleman from LTC. Everybody else, the school board, the county, we're in favor of closing that TIF up. It's time to wrap it up. Right, it's time to wrap it up. Dewey, are you still on the line?
I am, Tom. Can you hear
Okay.
me? Tom, I am.
Yeah. I'm just not sure why the insignia for the phone is up there.
I'm on the line.
And I'm not a Zoom guy. I Zoom a lot, but I'm not a techie guy.
He should be able to.
I am on the line,
Should be
Tom.
still on, but-
Yeah.
actually a pamphlet that we sent out a couple of years ago indicated that the village of Belgium, 21.3% is in the TIF district. So that ought to open up if that whole thing closes, That opens up a lot of tax money.
It does, but that is what we're going to be using to pay for the loan that we're gonna take out.
So your financial people have already looked at that.
Yes, we're already
Ellers and the
working on
people,
that.
okay.
So, you know, because we need to have a loan to pay for the road and the stormwater portion of it. So we can do that without a tax increase and possibly even a very small decrease in taxes, because the TID is closing. But that still puts our debt limit, is where we're in the problem.
And you're not alone. You guys are not alone. There was an article in the, Ronnie, you probably seen it, it was in the Milwaukee Journal a couple years ago, and it listed the people that had financial struggles in Ozaki, in the surrounding metro area. And you weren't alone.
Well, we don't have financial struggles, we just have a debt limit issue.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we will when we take this new loan,
Mhm.
How much,
and that's a state
how much,
set
the
debt limit
projects
issue.
that you're looking at now, how much?
For the sewer and water is gonna be 2 billion. And then the road, the storm water and the road construction is probably gonna be another 2 or 2.1.
No, it's gonna be more than that, it's gonna be closer to, it's gonna be over 3.
Where is that road construction now?
Danny, what roads are they?
It's gonna be, North Street, Elevator Lane, Commerce Street, Elm Street, and Park Street.
Oh.
All that sewer and water is gonna get done this year, new laterals, and then the following year, we have a major stormwater issue on that area. So that's gonna be-
So I do not believe Representative Brooks' office is going to be calling us. I'd probably like to move on a little bit to item B, update of land acquisition discussion with Dan Gosser. Pete and I went out there. I'm going to let Pete lead the discussion on where that went, Pete.
We had a very nice conversation. We met with Dan Gosser and his son Luke. I think we probably sat and talked for over a half hour, and, you know, it's something that once we get that far, can be worked out somehow. I mean, we're not at a standstill. I mean, they're willing to talk to us about it, so they had ideas, we had ideas. So our next step is to wait till we can get that far. So, but they are willing to talk to us about it, so, which has changed quite a bit, so.
And a compliment to both of them. They looked at it from a businessman's perspective. I'll just compliment them on that. I thought it was a very good discussion. But the meeting went well.
So,
Are we better to acquire the land?
Not in the next, you know, are we, let's say Vicky's saying it's 6 years, you know, for sure it's good. Are we better to acquire the land? It's not 5 years in and, you know, when it's pins and needles.
But I think very simply, and Pete, I'll just speak for what I heard out there that day. You know, probably somewhere around 8 acres that you're looking at taking, not taking, but trying to negotiate with them. And what Luke said it best, he goes, he would like to see industrial park values to what he would get for his farmland. And I think that's only fair to say that. So, you know, is it $100,000? I think, Pete, is that something?
see, that's probably pretty close.
That's just a guess. I'm not putting numbers out there. I don't want this in the press.
Yeah.
But, you know, that is something that if you wanted a benchmark, that could be, you know.
The only way we're going to find out is you study for the stormwater pond. And we got to find it. Right now, what it is safe.
Correct.
Give us another option, but now it's just a matter of that. But in the meanwhile, we gotta spend money to figure this all out. So,
And they're really not looking for a land swap. There's some land out there. They're really not looking at a swap because, as in their words, they want to farmland. They want farmland. So, yeah. Dewey, are you on the phone yet?
I am, Tom.
Okay, no, Dewey, we really struggled communicating with you. But I think we're to the point where if you could email the stuff over to Vicky with the village, have your staff do that, I think we'd be set on that. I don't think there's any other questions of you. I don't want to take your valuable time away, but I want to thank you for everything you do for village, the town, and Ozark
Well,
County.
I'm driving back from Madison, and I've heard every word you guys have said, but I don't know, there must be another problem here, but I'll get you that information, and we'll go from there. All right?
You sound great now, Dewey, so I'm sure you were just in a bad area, but thanks for everything you do.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Tom. See ya. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Dewey.
Okay, so anything to add on that land acquisition? Again, I think that's
Yeah,
something,
we were gonna find out how much land is we have to do some engineering out there.
right?
So. I know for the road part, if we go the road that we have designed now, it ain't much. We have to take to that. And the biggest issue is the pond. And, the pond would work great where the water sits now.
Well, is there, there's no doubt that you've got a major flooding problem out there. I hesitate to say this, but at least it's something to look at. Is there anything, ask McMahon to take a look, is there, if this thing is gonna be potentially 5-6 years down the road, is there a short-term solution that's not very expensive?
Yeah.
That can take care of a good chunk of the problem? There's always something.
The one thing, Dan, I would encourage you is to continue to communicate with Andrew
Yeah,
Struck.
Andy came out and we looked at it.
You looked at the scope of the project.
He said the first thing you do is get land for the pond. And I said, that's what we're struggling with.
Right.
I mean, yeah, and the problem we have here is the same owner owns the stuff on both sides.
They want,
The same owner owns the land on the
Oh,
north
okay.
side and the south side.
and there is no other location.
Well,
for
we were
that.
looking on the south side by the treatment plant, and they said they could maybe work some land there, but for us to do that, we have to hire in, McMahon to see if it would work there, and
We have to get the water from the north side of the road to the south side of the road first.
then back to the north side to the creek. So that, the pond really needs to be on the north side of the road. That's where it needs to be. And you all know where that is. It's just right east of Triton.
And I would say this year it was exasperated because we had a 7-inch rain event and an 8-inch rain
Yeah,
event.
oh yeah.
And it just really
That was right
glaringly
up.
reared its head, I can tell you the farmers had the same issues.
If you drive down the road, there's a hydrant. The water was 3-4 feet above the hydrant.
Didn't have nobody shovel that out.
Nope.
Okay, so I'm not sure where that is headed. Item C, rural development grants update. Vicky, is that you?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was basically telling you, the rural development grants is what I looked at. I also did get information, the League of Municipalities just added some information about there are stormwater grants available also. And I think that's what sorry, from Ozaukee County, Andrew was talking about. And I just started looking at it briefly, like within a week. The league sent out some information. And a lot of it is, loan forgiveness type of stuff also. But it's definitely worth exploring. And whenever I get grant information come across my desk, I look at it and see, So I'm gonna keep looking, but, right now, we're not really in a position to apply for anything, until we, commit to engineering costs.
But you would know more maybe next year when the TIF closes, kind of.
Yeah, I think that it's something that in a year's time, we will be in a better position to start seriously looking at some of the water issues out there after we solve the water problems on North Street.
So Vicky, one follow-up question. Say in a year from now, if you could sit down with the Gosser Farms Pete and yourself maybe, and, you know, your attorney, and negotiate it and have it set up for a year from now. The number I had mentioned earlier, is that something you could see that could maybe get snuck in there? To Dan's point, where none of this is gonna start without land.
Yeah.
That would be my suggestion. You know, Ronnie, would you agree? You're a business person first.
If you can't really, you have to have the land before you can start anything.
Well, yeah, somehow we have to tell McMahon to start looking, you know, on the south side road, see if that would even work.
And without owning it, you really have no right to go over there, right?
So I think very simply, you would need to get McMahon involved and your attorney and sit down with Gosser Farms and have that very candid discussion that possibly July of 2022, that, you know, we could have something in writing where we could pay you for that land and then the engineering could start. That's not going to be quite a big expense, Ronnie. So eventually you at least keep the wheels moving a little bit.
Well, wouldn't they be able to maybe you could negotiate something where they allow the engineering firm to go and take a look over there to determine how much land is
I
needed.
think the engineering should look at it now and
Right.
do nothing. I mean, they can do that right from their office and look at their
Right.
land and everything. We just gotta tell McMahon to do it
Right.
if we want to.
To look at it from their office.
Yeah, so
Okay, so
If
you
there's
don't
an
really
alternate
need them
solution.
to,
No.
you don't need to own the land to do that. You need to determine first,
yeah,
determine how much land do you really need.
I think the first step is we gotta get our engineering to look
And,
at it.
and you can do that, like you said, have McMahon do that from their office.
Do we know what that would cost to have McMahon do
We
that?
would have to talk to Matt. We should get a number once and see what it would cost. I'm gonna say maybe 5 to 10 grand.
Well, let's,
Very
the
early.
village has to take up, you guys. need
Yeah,
to-
right. That's something, again, like Ronnie would say, you would have to prioritize.
So if I understand it correctly, because I'm a little foggy, but that would definitely come prior to serious talk with Gosser.
Yeah, I think that we gotta have a place for the public to go.
We'd have to have the engineers say that this will work before we even go talk to.
Yeah.
Right, because
Talk
then
to
the
them.
engineer, now you can sit down, with us, we need 5.5 acres and here's where we need it.
It's gonna be
Or whatever it is.
We would like,
Yes,
We would-
yes.
right, This is what we would like to purchase.
we would like this.
Yeah, so very simply, I think we've answered some questions for the village. We've provided a little bit of a timeline as far as where they would like to go with this. As far as this committee, I don't see us setting a date for another meeting because I think the ball is really in the village's court. I could see in a year from now, maybe we get back together as you guys fulfilled a couple steps that we mentioned and we move forward, but I don't want to hurt your feelings, Pete, but I see no need to have the committee meet again until,
We really can't go any further until the engineers give us an idea what part of the land we could actually use. And then we'll have to go talk to
negotiate with the
owners and
Gossers.
see if they're willing to work with us.
It maybe doesn't hurt. I guess I'm open to the fact that maybe 6 months you sit down just to see if there's any new developments.
We certainly could do that.
It only takes a little while. you
Right.
know. Maybe there isn't, and I'll leave it up to you guys.
Right. No, I would have no problem with that, say 6 months from now. I think it's October.
Some Things happen.
What are we, the first Wednesday of the month? Vicky, when are we tentatively set
Why don't we
that?
take a look at it 6 months down the road, see if there's anything to talk about.
Right.
Yeah.
Because maybe there's.
And if there is no need, we won't have a meeting.
Or something.
But if there is,
Yeah.
I don't mind, and these two gentlemen will say the same thing. We're all about the community. We truly are. We want what's best for the community, you know, but
Be in September,
what's that?
September, 6 months.
I don't think it matters, September, October, you know. Vicky, you kind of look at it.
We don't want to meet on the first week of September, that's Labor Day, so
Oh,
October
yeah.
would probably be better.
Pete, I see you often enough. Let us know if there's any
Sure.
developments. We'll gladly meet. I know us three want the best for the community.
Yeah, it's, I became pretty convinced here, I mean, if monies are there, I mean, should be done, I seen what that road looked like last year. I think it was over you on water.
I would like to throw one little mention in. The governor did put the multimodal program back in the budget. I don't know if it's gonna stay there, but if it is there, that would certainly be something we could look at. Again, I think being two communities working together, could potentially strengthen our request.
Is there also something that, that the businesses themselves out there could be supportive of it in some ways? It seems to be, when that road was initially put in, either the businesses, there was, part of the reason they got the grant was because of the number of employees.
Right.
The growth that was out there.
Economic development.
Yeah, so is there something that more that could be done, like Hunt says, you got the businesses, that you get them involved to help with it?
We looked at that when we were just doing all the designing here 5 years ago. We had the T grant that was almost all filled out. And we knew how much money we were getting from them. So there was, a few bucks that was coming.
Just adding to Vicky's point, I will tell you from personal experience on these grants, this multimodal that we did, very simply, the ones that got the highest priority were more than one community, where you got letters of support and recommendation from business partners in the community. Those are, and John's shaking his head, the same thing I do. Those are the ones that garnered the most support. So that is something that we could work at. And I will tell you from the Towns Association, that is something we felt very strongly, if we could get that multimodal back in there. We've just been very, very fortunate to replace a lot of, and you don't realize it here where we are, but there's a lot of western Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, a lot of landlocked bridges that if that bridge isn't fixed, they drive 8-10 miles all the way around. And we're talking with farm equipment and buses and cement trucks, and it's a huge economic disaster. So I don't really have anything else. I guess, anybody else got anything that we need to talk about before we wrap this up? I want to thank John for coming, John. Thanks again for all your support. How about a motion to adjourn? Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Like you were just saying, I'm sure we could get letters of support from every one of those industrial people out there. Those owners out there, I'm sure they would definitely.
Right. And especially where they put the number of employees they have, the growth that they've had from 10 years ago to today, the potential, exactly, what the potential.
Are based on.
Yes, yes. And this multimodal is set up in the same way. So anybody else? Not, I look for motion to adjourn. Motion by Ronnie. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Brady. All in favor, aye? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.